Hey, welcome back to Tuesday afternoon.
Hi, everybody. It's Tuesday, and in honor of Five Nights and Freddy's anniversary, I'm making Freddy Fazbear. And thank you to the person who suggested it. It was perfect timing. Now, we're going to start out making the head, the most important part. We're going to use a foil aluminum core, and then I use original Sculpey oven bake over that. You don't have to make yours as large, but this will give you a good idea of the work that is involved in making Freddy Fazbear. And remember to also keep a reference photo so you can get all those tiny details that really distinguish him from the other versions of Freddy. Please let me know below if you would like to see me make more or what character you would like to see me make. Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, any of the toy versions, perhaps even Security Breach. Oh, Ballora, that might be neat. So let me know below. After the head is done baking the first time, I'm just going to go in and cut out the back and then remove the aluminum foil, all of it. I want to be able to put the eyes inside of the head and have them kind of float like they're part of the endoskeleton. Now remember, if you made any mistakes, these are relatively easy to fix at this time. So make slight changes, fix the eyes, and even if you need to rebake it, it will be okay. Just now I was testing out the size of the eye. Now I'm making the eyelid, and I want them to look like the animatronics eyes, like the endoskeleton. So I used a reference photo when making these, and it looks like it has an under eyelid that slid into the lower eyelid, and then there is an eyelash line at the top. And this will help you when you are painting the eye, kind of distinguish the top of the eyelid from the bottom of the eyelid. Now, don't worry. If this feels a little bit intimidating, you won't really see the top of the eye and the bottom of the eye very well. So just make sure you make a upper eyelid and a lower eyelid. Now, it is very important for you to have a hole in the back of the eye. This is where the wire is going to be inserted into. I just used a paintbrush to make the hole in the back of the eye. I also use it to hold my eye when I'm working on it. It's perfect. I made the first ear and then I'm going to use it as a template for my second ear. Now I noticed inside of the ear there's a little bit of a peak in the reference photo. So when shaping the ear, I want to note that little peak in the ear, and then the outside of the ear is more rounded. We're going to bake the eyes and the ears, and if we need to make any changes with the ears, we can always put it back in the oven, rebake it, or even sand it, where you want to have to put it back in the oven. If you make things on a larger scale, you can rebake them. Making the jaw, we're just going to use the head to kind of judge the size. And I'm going to roll out some clay and just wrap it around the foil core. You'll need to add some teeth into the mouth and align down the center of the jaw. Make sure that the jaw comes up onto the sides of the head like it's a hinge, like an animatronic. And then we're going to just take a bead of clay and we're going to smooth it out on the back of the jawline. Remember to have a gap in the front teeth, and there's also some gaps on the side of the teeth. Now the head is going to need to be baked again, and what I forgot to do was seal up the hole inside of the head. So if you forgot to do it like I did, you can use glue. But realize that after you put glue inside of the head, you can never bake it again. So I recommend putting polymer clay in that hole and sealing it very well with some extra polymer clay over the top. Bake that in the oven. Do not bake the head after you use glue inside of it. Now here we're just simply painting the eye, paying attention to the very top of the eye where the eyelash line is. So make sure that you use that as a guiding line. Thank you all so much for your kind comments and your critiques. It means a lot, and I think I've learned what people want to see when I make these videos. And thank you for helping me do what I love to do. When you're painting the eyes, use a reference photo, add in the light flares. I'm using a tool to actually scratch out the little white lines in the center of the eye. Now here I am just inserting the eyes. I've taken the wire that I showed you how to attach earlier and putting it up through the holes that I made in the head. And I'm just kind of adjusting them to the right placement. So when I get them in their right placement, I'm going to bend the wire on the top of the head and glue it down so it won't move around. Now, one thing I forgot to do, which I recommend doing before putting the eyes in because they might get scratched, is putting layers of varnish over the actual painted part of the eye. I do 3 layers of virathane, and you can find that on Amazon. I use it for all my clay pieces that I want to have a finish on them. I also put that over any chalk pastel that I use on my polymer clay sculptures. Freddy's hat is very simple, so we're not going to have a problem making that. And I use a paper cup as a template for the brim of the hat. Just that easy. And what I did was I took the brim of the hat and I pressed it up against the top of the head where the glue was in, and I just made those areas where the glue was a little bit larger because when you stick it in the oven, it's going to shrink just a little bit, but enough that it's gonna not want to go on there just right. Now, when you're making the body, keep in mind the proportion. Freddy's head is a little bit larger than the body. The head is the most important part of the sculpture, but also the proportions will give you the full effect of Freddy Fazbear. If the proportions are not correct, it won't look like him. The head must be larger, the body just a little bit smaller. I found this part very challenging because I knew how important it was. So take your time with adjusting the body to fit the proportions. Here I'm just making holes where the arms will go in, and you want it to have a kind of cavernous area because we won't be able to make an exoskeleton, but we want to give the illusion that there is one. So we want plenty of kind of voided space to be able to paint in black paint and give it that full effect that it's hollow on the inside. Now make sure when you're doing the waistline that you smooth those edges out to give them a full animatronic effect. Also, don't forget to draw on a raised area where his stomach is. I'm going to finish off this piece with a little bit of texture. This will help the paint grab on, but also give it that animatronic effect. Another great thing about adding texture is the piece doesn't have to be very smooth. If you make some minor indentations or there's a little line or it's not perfect, you won't be able to tell because there'll be texture on top. You can use a toothbrush to get the same texture. One of the most often asked questions in my comment section is what tools you should use. I recommend using the tools that best fit you. I don't necessarily use a very expensive set because I know that I'm mostly going to be using my hands. Get to know the clay. If you find that you mostly just work with your hands, then you're not going to need a very expensive set. You find you lean on tools more than your own hands, then that's what I would recommend. Those tools are going to be used more often, and you're going to want a very finite set. So just figure out what's best for you. Another question asks how to store your polymer clay. What I usually do when I get my polymer clay in is that I put it into a large Ziploc bag to seal it in so it doesn't dry out. I do that whenever I get a new box of polymer clay. I feel it, I kind of see how old it is and how soon I'm going to need to use it because each batch is going to vary. Some are softer, some are harder. When working with aluminum foil, a finish might rub off onto your hands. Just remember to clean your hands after shaping the aluminum foil. You don't want that to rub off onto your polymer clay. After I finish the arms, I'm going to assemble them to make sure it looks right. I'm going to use two wires twisted together because this sculpture in particular is very heavy. I want this sculpture to be able to hold its arms in place because he is going to have in one hand a microphone. And one of the most common poses of Freddy Fazbear is him holding his microphone mid stomach. So I want to make sure he can do that. Each finger is put on individually because I want him to have a kind of animatronic, kind of cartoon look to him. Keep in mind that he is going to be holding the microphone. It's a very easy shape to sculpt. Have the lower part of the microphone, make a oil core, and then you put polymer clay over it, and then you make a circular shape and you put polymer clay over that. Don't forget to add a lip onto the microphone. Make sure the edges are nice and sharp. Next, we're going to be moving on to the legs. And in the beginning, I wanted the legs posable. But as I made the sculpture, I realized that the shape of the legs probably wouldn't work for a posable figure. Also, I want him to be able to stand up. So that's a lot of weight he's going to have to be holding. I decided to make his legs frozen. It's all going to be made in separate pieces, but I'm going to make it one piece eventually. So here I'm making the upper portion of the leg. I still want to make the areas where it looks like it's cavernous, but I want to hold that shape for him to be able to stand up. Now I'm making the lower portion of his leg, and this is much easier than the upper leg. The upper leg had a slight angle. The lower leg is just more of a cylinder shape. After you get the leg done and you've made the cavernous areas, you're going to want to make a kneecap. The kneecap is just an elliptical shape. We're going to roll out a piece of clay and we're going to cut the shape out. Next, we're going to take the kneecap and shape it so it fits inside of the lower and upper leg. Remember that the upper leg and the reference photo will slightly hang over the kneecap. You want that to fit in perfectly. Here I'm making holes for the wire to go through. I'm just taking a piece of foil so I get that little bit of space, and I'm wrapping it around the two pieces of wire. I'm going to come back in and I'm going to put some clay onto the back so I can make the endoskeleton. I'm going to make some grooves on the back of the inside of the leg. so it looks like it's a mechanical part of the animatronic. So now we're moving on to the foot, and this is probably my favorite part of making this particular sculpture. I'm going to make a template using the leg as a reference, making sure it's the right size. And then I'm going to roll out a piece of clay, making sure it is the correct depth. If you look at the reference photo, you can see that there's actually two parts of the foot. Oh, I want to recommend if you do sculpt the foot to put parchment paper underneath the foot so you can move it around easily. And when you're done sculpting, you can just slide the parchment paper onto the pan. It makes it so much easier to have that parchment paper down. You can easily move it around and not worry about you damaging that piece. You're going to want to have that foot nice and flat on the bottom. And if you're trying to transfer it over to a pan, you might damage it. Moving on to the second part of the foot, I'm just kind of blocking in the shape of the foot. If you're going to pick this up and smooth on the clay, you're going to need to make this one piece, but I'm just going to do it in segments. Looking at the reference photo, it looks like the foot gradually moves up towards the ankle and then it levels out. What I plan on doing is taking the leg and pressing it down into the foot. This will make it so it fits together like a puzzle piece. I think this will help with it bearing the weight better. I'm going to add a lip to the back of the foot, and then I'm going to make holes to coincide with the holes in the bottom of the leg. I put 4 holes in one and 5 in the other, so I could tell them apart when I start putting them together. And I'm going to go in with my texture tool and add all the texture onto the foot, paying attention to not damaging the flat part of the foot. I want it to be really nice and smooth because it's going to have a lighter color on it, and any nicks or scratches on that part of the foot are going to be really noticeable. If you mess up and it's got some marring on the side, you can just go in and sand it, or you can use your X-Acto knife and clean up the edge. Here I'm just adding all the black paint into the voided areas, and I'm adding a gray paint to the endoskeleton portion. I'm actually going to come back in and add a metallic finish to the endoskeleton later. Not putting black paint on all of the parts of the leg because I'm actually going to use hot glue in those areas. Here I'm putting on the first layer of brown paint. This will take several layers. This particular brown has a lot of red undertones. I mixed them myself, and I wanted it to have a dark brown, rich color in the dark and a light brown, almost with a yellowish tinge to it in the light. So how I accomplished that was several layers of the reddish brown paint, and then I came back in and added a light brown over it. And I used raw sienna as the top coat. And I think it really got that effect of Freddy in the dark versus Freddy in the light. So you can see here I started slowly assembling the sculpture. I want to make sure the color is even and it matches. So I want the piece together as I'm painting the limbs. Okay, now it's time to paint the layers of raw sienna. Appearances can be deceiving at times. When this paint is wet, it has more of a raw sienna color. Once it dries, it's going to darken. So you're going to need several layers of this tone. I left the hands smooth. So if you decided later on after you were done sculpting that you would like to have a textured effect on the hands, you can just do this with paint. I'm just dabbing on the raw sienna with my brush, and I'm going to do about 3 layers of this textured dabbing. Okay, once you have the hands finished, we're just going to cover the whole body in raw sienna. Do you have something that you would like me to make here on YouTube? A suggestion? Please let me know in the comments section below. I love making these sculptures. I had such a great time making this, and I really like how it turned out. I'm so glad somebody suggested it because it looks so cool sitting on my floor in the studio. And if you want me to make Bonnie, Chica, or Foxy, let me know below because I could have the whole gang in my studio. Wouldn't that be cool? Now, he took a lot more work than I thought he would. Not so much technical work, but structural work. He had to bear a lot of weight, and he stands up just fine. So if you make him how I made him, it should be great. He came out to a whopping 24 inches tall, and I'm so glad I made him this big. He just looks amazing, and I'm so happy, and I'm so appreciative of all the people here who watch my videos. I hope I can help you make a Freddy of your very own. Here I'm just adding the metallic paint on. You can actually even use silver metallic nail polish if you don't have the metallic paint at home. And you're going to want to add on several coats of varnish afterwards. I added it to his microphone, his bow tie, his teeth, and his hat. Nose endoskeleton, and a tiny bit to his eyebrows. I think I covered everything. Okay, guys, we are on the final steps. We're going to add a tan raw sienna color to the stomach and also to that secondary part of the feet. I'm going to draw in the dots and then I'm going to cover them with black paint. And we're done. All finished. What do you think? You know, maybe I should start up a restaurant, have some mascots. Maybe they have some lying around somewhere. I could just have some kind of spring lock mechanism. I'm sure they've improved it by now, and as long as they don't breathe as often, I'm sure everything will be fine. You know, don't you think? Thanks everybody for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.